There are an increasing number of secular scientists claiming that our universe is not the only one that exists. They go on to say that ours is only one in an overall multiverse, which contains an infinite number of universes. Let's discover the surprising reasons these scientists are claiming this and why this is an unscientific and ultimately self-contradictory idea. We'll reveal why this hypothesis does nothing to eliminate the need for a creator and designer of the universe. Coming up on today's edition of Origins, do we live in a multiverse? With Spike Psaris. Hello, welcome to Origins. I'm Ray Heipel. We have a fascinating show for you today. Our guest, Spike Psaris, has a degree in electrical engineering and has done graduate work in physics. He was formerly an engineer in the United States military space program. He is an author and popular speaker on astronomy and related topics. Spike founded Creation Astronomy and has produced many fascinating videos defending a young Earth view as related in the Bible. Welcome to the program, Spike.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
I'm really excited about this title and about this program. I don't think we've ever specifically covered this before. Do we live in a multiverse? We hear that all the time, multiverse.
Right. There's more and more people saying that we do. But as we'll see, this isn't actually a good scientific model. So we should begin by saying, what is a multiverse anyway, for people who haven't heard this word before? So multiverse is just a combination of the word multiple and universes. And it captures the idea that there's a potentially infinite number of universes in physical reality, of which we only occupy one. So first of all, you asked the question, this is kind of strange, how can there be more than one universe if the word universe means everything? Well, the word has been redefined a bit. Now a universe has been defined to mean anything that we could possibly perceive, even with the best possible technology and telescopes and so on. So the claim from people advocating a multiverse is that there's an infinite number of universes existing. We're only in one of them, and all these others are out there, but unobservable to us. So in this show, we're going to unpack some of the implications of this and see where that idea really leads you to and what the actual motivation is for the people who advocate it.
Sounds great. Let's get started.
So, of course, we're coming at this from a biblical perspective. And the Bible tells us that the heavens declare the glory of God. And there's so many ways in which the heavens do that. So much evidence of design and fine-tuning, even beyond the wonder and the beauty that we see in the cosmos. And just from a perspective of intelligent design and fine-tuning, there's so many things we could talk about, and some of this will tie into the multiverse concept, as we'll see in a moment. But things like the Earth is really well designed in many ways to support life. There's plenty of water on Earth, which is vital to life in multiple ecosystems. And interestingly, the secular model actually says there shouldn't be any water here because the gas cloud that we supposedly came from couldn't have condensed water out of it at our distance from the sun. Nevertheless, the Earth is covered with water. So the Earth not only does not meet the expectations of secular origins models, it's also, in this example, very well suited for the support of life. We have a magnetic field that protects us from radiation from space. Our rotation period of 24 hours turns out to be just right. If it were faster, we'd have violent winds. If it were much slower, you'd have stronger swings in temperature from night to day. 24 hours is a Goldilocks value. It's just right for life on Earth. Our axial tilt of 23.5 degrees gives us moderate seasons, which isn't necessarily the case for some of the other planets. If the Earth were more like some of them in our solar system, we wouldn't have the seasons that we do. But again, this is just right in this aspect of our planet. Our orbit around the sun is circular, unlike some other orbits in the solar system. But our orbit being circular means we stay almost exactly the same distance from the sun throughout the year, and so our climate is not affected by changes in that. Our atmosphere, not too thin, not too thick, perfect composition to support life. Our position in the solar system, close enough to the sun to be warm enough for liquid water to be possible, yet not too far where liquid water would turn into ice and life wouldn't be possible. Inside the orbit of Jupiter, so its large gravitational field pulls in potential things that might hit the Earth otherwise, protects us from harmful events like that. Lots of other aspects. I mean, we've done an entire show on how uniquely designed for life the Earth is. Looking out into the overall cosmos, there's other aspects of our existence that appears to be designed and finely tuned for life. Our sun supports life on Earth in multiple ways, not only by producing warmth, also producing food through the growth of plants and many other aspects of supporting life here on our planet. You sometimes hear that our sun is average, mediocre star. That's not true at all. Our sun's actually brighter than 90% of all stars in the Milky Way, more mass than 92%. And even solar-type stars, the stars that we see that are most like our sun, show that our sun is very unique. Even solar-type stars typically erupt in massive superflares about once every 100 years. A superflare is about 10 million times as violent as a flare on our sun is. Very destructive to any planet that might be orbiting such a star. But our sun doesn't do that. Our sun is very unusual, very unique, and finely tuned. One 30-year study of the sun's photosphere showed that the sun was constant in temperature, essentially, through that entire period. Whereas we see other stars, even the ones most like our sun, can be very violent and unstable, at least in terms of a planet orbiting around them. Our sun is not like that. Very well designed for life. Even our position in the Milky Way galaxy, people have argued, is perfect to support life. Different locations in our galaxy would experience supernova explosions, gamma ray bursts, strong bursts of radiation from various events. We don't have that in our neighborhood in the galaxy. So all of these elements, and we could dig deeper into a lot of these, as you can imagine, a lot of arguments to show that our position in the galaxy, the sun we're orbiting, our home planet itself, all very well designed and finely tuned for life. Other authors have looked at things like properties of chemistry and of certain types of atoms appear to be finely tuned, and that these unique combinations of characteristics that some of these elements have, very difficult to explain from a random chance origin. Even the Big Bang model itself, which is supposed to show how everything got here without a creator, turns out to require extreme amounts of fine-tuning. For example, the amount of dark energy in the Big Bang model has to be finely tuned to 1 out of 10 to the 123rd power. So that's a 1 with 123 zeros after it.
And when you say that it has to be that way, if it was a little bit more or less, if it wasn't that, the universe wouldn't work.
We wouldn't be here to be talking about it. Even now, I'm not saying that it's possible for life to develop in a Big Bang universe, or that a Big Bang itself is possible, as the model itself would say. But what I'm saying, even from their perspective, even if you believe that model, you have to accept that this random event was extremely finely tuned. And what do I mean by extremely? For the Big Bang to be finely tuned at 10 out of 123rd power means that the fraction of, sorry for throwing big numbers around, 10 to the minus 43 power, so 1 divided by that tiny fraction of the mass energy of a single atom is how finely tuned the Big Bang had to be according to the model itself. So even secular modelers who try to explain how everything got here without God have to admit that this random event without a designer orchestrating everything had to be extremely finely tuned. So what do you do with that? Well, from our perspective, we would say none of this is surprising, because the Bible says that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So God is a wonderful designer, much more intelligent than us, obviously. He can design everything in the way that it appears to be designed. But we are told that this is not a valid explanation. Why is that? Because this is a supernatural explanation. Now, the prefix super means above or beyond. So that which is supernatural is something that is above or beyond the natural world that we can see around us. And we are told that only natural processes are allowed in science to explain that which we see. And this view is called naturalism, that we're only allowed to use natural causes, not anything supernatural in our explanations. And of course, the primary predominant natural model today is the Big Bang model. So if you don't mind, I'll go up to the screen for a moment.
Very good. Let's go.
So a lot of people have heard of the Big Bang model. There's different stages to this model, and I'm going to focus on just a couple in the very beginning. The general idea is that a long time ago there was a quantum fluctuation, and then the universe leapt into existence. Initially, there was a lot of energy. The energy condensed into matter. The matter gathered itself into galaxies, and then there were stars, and then there was planets, and eventually there were people. Now, that's 14 billion years of alleged history to talk about, almost. I want to focus on a couple stages of this in the very beginning. So this is meant to go from left to right. This is the beginning, and then going through time to today. You see how the universe started out small, got bigger quickly, and then expanded over time. This isn't quite the scale. The actual expansion would have been more than this. But the important thing that I want to talk about, the very beginning of this says that there was a quantum fluctuation, a fluctuation in a quantum field. That's how the universe leapt into existence, where it leapt into existence from. Then immediately afterward, there was a period of inflation, where the universe massively expanded. It exploded outwards in size for a very short time. Subsequent to that, the expansion rate slowed down quite a bit, and then it's been expanding since then for the past 13.8 billion years, give or take. So a lot to talk about within this model, but again, let's focus on the very beginning. Overall question is, did the universe begin at the Big Bang? That seems like kind of a simple question, but it's interesting. There's only two real answers to it, yes or no. If the universe began at the Big Bang, then there could have been nothing before the Big Bang. Because if not, then whatever began wasn't the full universe. So if the universe began, then it had to come from nothing. But physics doesn't allow something to come from absolutely nothing. Sometimes secular authors will say, well, the laws of physics permit this. Well, actually they don't, first of all. And second of all, even if they did, laws of physics describe how a universe operates. There are no laws of physics before there's a universe, nor are the laws of physics things that can make something. So when dealing with things like the Big Bang model, there's a lot of concepts that get thrown on that really don't make a lot of sense if you think about it, and unfortunately a lot of people don't think all that deeply. My point for now is if the universe began at the Big Bang, then it had to come from absolutely nothing, which violates physics because something can't come from nothing. So that's not really a valid option. But the idea that there's always been something doesn't work either, because had there always been something, the universe would be eternal. Stars would all have burned out by now, and no new stars could form because the energy available for that would have been consumed, and so on. So for various reasons, neither of these options really work, and I call this a secular dilemma. We did an entire show on this that I'd recommend to people if they're interested, but it shows that if you try to explain how the universe got here without God, you have a problem. You're going to violate physics in your model one way or the other. But setting that aside, there's other issues with the Big Bang model specifically that we can talk about. The Big Bang model actually has problems with multiple lines of evidence. It's contradicted by data in a couple different ways. Number one, the Big Bang model predicts that the universe should be filled with what are called magnetic monopoles, particles that are magnetic, but they only have one pole, either north or south, but not both. Big Bang model predicts the universe should be filled with these. We haven't seen one yet. That's a prediction that failed, and data against the Big Bang model. A second issue is called the horizon problem. This is a map of the cosmic microwave background. There's low temperature radiation coming to Earth from all directions in space, and secular scientists believe that this is the leftover afterglow from the Big Bang. The problem is the Big Bang model says there should be large-scale temperature differences across the CMB, the cosmic microwave background, and there's not. The entire universe is almost exactly the same temperature to roughly 1,000th of a degree. Again, contradicts very decisively what the Big Bang model would say must be. A third issue is called the flatness problem. There's a concept in cosmology called curvature of the universe, and without going into details about that, the universe should be strongly curved in one direction in its geometry. It should be either this or this, but it turns out to be that, flat to a very high degree of precision. This is a very strong indication of fine-tuning in the beginning of the model, but the Big Bang isn't supposed to have fine-tuning. It's supposed to explain how everything got here without a designer or a creator orchestrating it all. Each issue alone is enough to disprove the model because it's a firm prediction made by the model that is contradicted by the data. So how do secular scientists deal with this? Well, we talked about the beginning with the so-called fluctuation. Those three problems I just described are supposed to be solved by something called cosmic inflation. Now, I mentioned this briefly, the idea that the universe exploded outwards in size immediately after it leapt into existence. Now, here's a little animation. It just goes boom, supposedly. Now, this animation doesn't do justice to how quickly inflation would have happened were it actually a real event. It's supposed to be an expansion of 10 to the 30th power in a tiny, tiny fraction of a second. What do I mean by fraction of a second? Well, imagine how long a second is, and then slice it up into a billion slices. Take one of those slices and chop that one up into a billion slices. Take one of those and chop that up into a billion slices. What you have left is still longer than the period of inflation when the universe blew up in size by 10 to the 30th power. Now, that's still just a big number. What does that mean? Well, if the universe were the size of a dime, then in that tiny fraction of a second, it would have exploded outwards in size to wider than 10 million galaxies side by side. Is this a process that we see in physics? This expansion is, by the way, many, many multiple times the speed of light. So this whole idea of the universe exploding outwards in size at multiple times the speed of light is totally outside of known physics. It's supposed to be driven by a particle called the inflaton. But has anybody ever seen an inflaton? No. Does anybody have any room in the standard model of particle physics for an inflaton? No. It's this completely hypothetical, made-up thing that's necessary to explain away the problems with the Big Bang model. And even some secular scientists are admitting to this. This author said, what drove inflation? Nobody knows. Physicists have suggested different models to describe the inflating universe, but all the solutions are mathematical conveniences with no particular physical basis. And then this physicist says, all the theories of inflation amount to proof that we don't have one good theory yet. Because that makes sense. If you had one good theory, people wouldn't be suggesting alternatives. There's a lot of different ideas surrounding inflation, but none of them actually work because this process is completely outside of physics. So the basic logic is basically what you just said. How do we know this process happened, that inflation actually occurred? Well, it must have occurred because otherwise the Big Bang model would have these fatal problems. So the Big Bang can't be questioned. It is assumed to be fact. Therefore, inflation must happen because that's the only way we know how to explain away the problems that the Big Bang model has. Then somebody realized once inflation starts, it actually can't stop due to quantum effects that we don't need to discuss now. Point is, once inflation begins, it'll continue forever. And the way this all works is there would be perpetual bubbles of inflation occurring separately from each other, each of which would spawn part of physical reality that wouldn't be observable to the rest. I know that's kind of a weird way to say that. So basically, they call this production of bubble universes. There's been an eternal production of universes bubbling off through time, all splitting off from each other. It's been going on eternally long. It'll continue forever into the future, producing an infinite number of universes through this inflationary process. And this is ultimately the source for the claim that there's a multiverse. As we said, multiverse means there's multiple universes, and we discussed how this is a new definition for the word universe in a way. But this is the claim, that there is now an infinite number of universes because of this eternal inflation process that's been going on forever and will continue to go on forever through time. Now, what are the implications of this? Well, if there's an infinite number of universes out there, every possible combination of particles is out there an infinite number of times. And from a secular scientist perspective, they think we're all just matter in motion. We're all just particles moving around. So this has some interesting implications if you think about it. This article says, is there another copy of you reading this article? A person living on a planet called Earth with misty mountains, fertile fields, and sprawling cities in a solar system basically like ours. The life of this person has been identical to yours in every respect. They're another copy of you, same name, same memories, and all the rest. If space is infinite and the distribution of matter is sufficiently uniform, then even the most unlikely events must take place somewhere. In particular, there are infinitely many other inhabited planets, including not just one, but infinitely many, with people with the same appearance, name, and memories as you. They are you in all respects of the word. Indeed, there are infinitely many other regions the size of our observable universe where every possible cosmic history is played out.
Spike, I'm going to have to stop you right there. Right after these messages, we're going to talk about how this idea is not a valid scientific idea.
We hope you're enjoying Origins TV. It all started at Cornerstone Television in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've been producing new episodes for over 37 years now. We praise God for the success of the program and are excited to introduce you to Origins and to us. If you're interested in watching more episodes of Origins, you can find them on our YouTube page. Simply go to YouTube and search Cornerstone Television Network. Click the like and subscribe buttons, then you'll find the best episodes of Origins in our playlist. You can also visit our website at ctvn.org/origins. One more way you can stay connected with us is to subscribe to our free monthly Hope Today newsletter, which you can do from our website. And if you have any questions, call us here at Cornerstone Television at 888-665-4483. We'd love to connect with you. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back to Origins. We're talking to Spike Basaris, who's been sharing about, do we live in a multiverse? Really fascinating, Spike. We left off with this concept, and we want to say, is this a valid scientific idea?
No, and when you really think about the implications of it, you see there's multiple aspects of it. So we left before the break with this quote about how there are infinitely many copies of each of us out there in the cosmos. Now think about what that means. If there's an infinite number of you out there in the multiverse, how valuable are you as an individual?
You have infinitely less than nothing value, right?
You're no longer an individual created in the image of God. You're one of many who infinite number have died, infinite number are yet to be born. But even beyond the moral aspects of it, secular scientists embrace this idea because they like that it provides, they think, an explanation for fine-tuning. Before the break, we talked about all these different aspects of apparent design and fine-tuning in the Earth, the Sun, the galaxy, the cosmos itself. From a secular perspective, that's a real challenge, but if there's an infinite number of universes out there, they think, hey, this fixes the problem. As this author said, inflation says that there's a multiverse, that there's an infinite number of ways the universe might come out, and we just happen to live in the one that is smooth and flat. Now, is we just happen to live in one, is that really a scientific model? It sounds like an appeal to the law of large numbers, as they say. But this idea is getting really popular. This is just the books I could fit on one particular slide, but there's more beyond these. A lot of authors are coming out with books now about all these other universes that we can never observe. And even in popular culture, we see this now in movies, especially some of the things aimed at the younger generation. This idea of multiverse and parallel universes is really becoming popular. This author says, our most successful theories lead to the inescapable conclusion that our universe is just a speck in a vast sea of universes. This one author said that it's there and we need to deal with it. It's not just some optional thing. So the one thing we know about all these other universes is that they're unobservable by definition. In fact, if you think about it, if you ever could get evidence for the multiverse, it wouldn't be evidence from the multiverse by definition, because if you can see the evidence, then it's not part of the multiverse, it's part of this universe. What word did we use to describe something that's outside of the natural?
Well, that would be supernatural.
Supernatural, exactly. And you remember at the beginning of this segment of the show, we talked about how we are not allowed, so they say, to invoke the God of the Bible as an explanation for design, fine-tuning, creation, because it's a supernatural explanation which is not allowed in science.
That's right. It's beyond science because we can't observe God, we can't test God, we can't subject God to experiments. Therefore, God has to be kept out of the equation.
Right, because supernatural explanations are not allowed. Yet here we see they are doing the exact same thing, while claiming that it's science. So to explain away apparent design and fine-tuning, they're invoking a supernatural explanation, while at the same time denying that supernatural explanations are valid.
That's a convenient position to be in.
It's convenient and more than a little hypocrisy going on here, I think. And even some secular scientists complain about this. This author said, these multiverse theories all share the same fundamental defect. They can be neither confirmed nor falsified. Hence, they don't deserve to be called scientific. Multiverse theories aren't theories, they're science fictions, theologies, works of the imagination, unconstrained by evidence.
I like that, theologies. He's admitting that this is a kind of divine thing that you're
overlapping
inventing.
with those sorts of questions, absolutely. And this author said, my own moral concerns about the multiverse have more to do with worry that pseudoscience is being heavily promoted to the public. If a wrong idea is promoted for enough years, it gets into the textbooks and becomes part of the conventional wisdom about how the world works. This process is now well underway with multiverse pseudoscience. So to conclude our show here, the question of do we live in a multiverse, different aspects of it. First of all, secular scientists claim that we live in a multiverse, multiple universes. Why do they claim that? Well, because the multiverse would be produced by inflation. If inflation happened, then the multiverse would be formed. Well, why do they believe inflation? A concept that has no basis in physics, because inflation is necessary to explain away problems with the Big Bang model.
So to save the Big Bang, we've got to have inflation, but if we have inflation, we have to have a multiverse. Therefore, we have to have a multiverse.
Exactly. So the whole thing is ultimately being driven by a need to protect the Big Bang model from the evidence.
Wow.
And from contradictory data. Now, the Bible tells us that we can know the validity of something by its fruits. So we can actually apply this to the multiverse because it has more implications even beyond the ones we've had a chance to discuss in this show.
Absolutely. Well, I really want to thank you for being on this program. It's been fascinating.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
And I want to thank you for joining us. Today we considered the strange new idea put forward by secular scientists that we live in a multiverse, that there are an infinite number of universes eternally being produced, exhausting all possibilities for all realities. This fantastic concept is put forward in order to save a naturalistic view of reality, because without the multiverse, the evidence demands the existence of God. It just goes to show once again that we know what the Bible says is true, and the proof is all around you. If you enjoy Origins, we sure could use your help to keep this Creation Television program on the air. Your support, both prayerfully and financially, make a big impact. So let's work together and reveal how awesome our Creator truly is. And we'll see you next time right here on Origins.
Thank you for watching this edition of Origins. For a DVD of this series, you can order online or send a $12 donation to cover shipping and handling, and write to Origins Program number 2505, Cornerstone Network, Wall, Pennsylvania, 15148.
This presentation was made possible by the faithful prayers and financial support of you, our Cornerstone family.